amnetwork. You already see it behind me. Actually, first let me show you where I am, because this is an extraordinary view. We are on the Stelvio Almeriense, the Spanish Stelvio, to introduce you to the new Moto Guzzi Stelvio. Highly anticipated the return of Moto Guzzi in the sector of adventure bikes with a 19-inch front wheel. Some features are unique for those that concern the bike in its category, such as the cardan, the shaft transmission, and also the electrically adjustable windshield, which I will show you right away. 70 millimeters electrically adjustable through this button on the left block. Let's start right away. Initially, I'm going to describe the bike from an aesthetic point of view. I leave the judgment to you, but personally I like it. But of course, everything comes from a personal judgment. Aesthetically, I was saying I'll leave you to judge it. On this side, it's a little bit in the shade, forgive me, but the sun is really blazing. Right now, I didn't have how to do it. And on this side, it's more illuminated. Great care was put into the aerodynamic study, with many hours spent in simulation and also in wind tunnels to define a body that could protect the driver the best and also avoid turbulence. Less turbulence also means, remember, less noise also in the helmet. So this thing is not to be underestimated. Let's start from the chassis at the frame. In fact, starting from the chassis, I remind you one thing, that this is a sister bike of the V100 Mandello, in the sense that the project started in parallel and then differed over time. So it would not be correct to say that this bike derives from the V100 Mandello because they are two parallel projects. In fact, here the frame is more rigid in the front. They have sought more rigidity through two additional attachment points to the engine in the front, which the engine is always a stressed element of the chassis, a longer steering headstock, which among other things also helps to have a better turning radius in the rear. This stiffening that in the front part of the V100, maybe I already mentioned it, in the rear part, this stiffening is achieved through a reinforcement, let's put it this way, in this part here of the swing arm, and also through an espacement of the walls of the swing arm that houses the drive shaft, which become 5 to 7 millimeters thick, so considerably thicker than the V100 Mandello. This is also because the bike is intended to do some off-roading, although light off-roading, but nevertheless it is also intended to do some off-roading. The chassis is totally different as far as the front end is concerned than on the V100 Mandello, because here we have a 46 millimeter diameter inverted series fork and not 41 adjustable in preload and rebound through. I'll show you, here it is. The adjuster you see on this side on the front, we also find the discs at 320 millimeters. Calipers, radial mount monoblock. The 10 9-inch rim accommodates a 120 tire. Michelin Anarchy Adventure 2 CTs were chosen, and of course the spoked and tubeless rims at the rear. We find instead a 280 millimeter disc, dual piston caliper, 170 tire. And now I'll show you something for what concerns the gimbal on this issue. Also here the rim is tubeless, of course, to accommodate such a big tire. Such a pot-bellied 170 tire, a purely road tire, an artifice has been made, if you will, however, a solution. In fact, it's fair to call it that. A particularly refined solution here in the area of the gimbal pivot, which is offset 6 degrees in with the shaft. So it works in a slightly shifted way, slightly oblique. It goes in this direction to leave more room here for the tire, the rear shock absorber. As you see at the coils, which have an ascendo of progressiveness at the top, are closer, more spaced out in the final one, adjustable. The mono in preload, thanks to the big knob that makes everything easy, and also in rebound. I hope I haven't forgotten anything, because now we go to the engine, the the transverse V900, and 90 degrees, which delivers 115 horsepower at 8,700 revolutions, being able to push up to 9,500 revolutions up here in this part of the rev counter. And it also delivers 105 Newton meter at 1,750 revolutions. But 82% of the torque is available from 3,500 revolutions up. So that would actually determines a particularly vigorous engine. At every engine speed, we may have already told you everything about the V100 Mandello, but I'll summarize it for you. Liquid cooled Euro 5 Plus gearbox in this case. And of course, guys, the big watch here was the gearbox. No use hiding behind a finger. The V100 Mandello did not leave everyone happy as far as the performance of its gearbox, that was sometimes particularly hard here, was intervened quite radically, was changed, the positioning of the parastrape was changed, the desmondromic of the gearbox. Also, the intervention logics of the cruise shifter have changed, and I anticipate you right now. Actually, no, I do not anticipate anything. Wait for the road test to know how it goes. However, quite radical changes have been made to the gearbox, which, by the way, have also been later reversed on the new V100 Mandello. This is right to point out. We will see in a moment how the 6-speed gearbox works, among other things, with wet clutch in the road test. The measurements of the bike are of the 1,530 millimeters. The wheelbase 830 millimeters instead. The saddle, the height of the saddle to the ground. Beware. 2 additional saddles are available, higher and lower, but only as a heated accessory, and is heated possibly also the rear seat. I'll show you now the upper part of the V100 actually. First I'll tell you the weight, 232 kilos without fuel, 236 kilos in running order. And let's go to the upper part of the control deck. Sorry, I said V100 Mandello, but I meant, of course, Stelvio. Of the Stelvio, the risers go up to 101 thousandths of a millimeter, compared to the 80 of the V100 blocks that we already somehow know. To manage the motor maps to this button, you see it here. And also the cruise control. And this, by the way, is a multi-function tool because the electronics are very refined. We have 5 riding modes with 3 engine maps, 4 maps of disengageable traction control, 2 modes of ABS, and there is of course the map also dedicated to off-road, the off-road map, which has the traction control to 1 on the rear rail, but it's disengageable, and of course the ABS is disengaged on the rear rail, but if you want you can disengage it on the front wheel as well when you then turn off. And turn the ignition back on the off-road map remains, but the ABS on the front wheel will turn out to be another time engaged. The last accent I want to refer to as far as the Stelvio is concerned, in the meantime, I'll also show you the USB press here next to the dashboard, which, by the way, can handle connectivity through the Piaggio Group's MIA app, MIA Moto Guzzi. One very important thing that I left at the end concerns one of the electronic features that, in my opinion, are most important of the Stelvio, that is the front and rear radars and the electronic suite that integrates them. That is the PFF, which are the driving aids through radar, said very, very simply. Without going too much into every single function, this electronic suite PFF allows you to have the forward collision warning, that is the possibility of being warned through a warning light, and also an acoustic signal from the fact of being too close to the vehicle that is proceeding and through the rear. Radar cover the blind spot and therefore cause the light here and also here at the bottom on the instrumentation, and also to manage the lane change. When you change lanes, warns that there is always through warning lights or beeps on the instrumentation, warns that there is a vehicle precisely in the high lane. This, of course, is part of the PFF version of the Stelvio, to which you can optionally add the adaptive cruise control. That is the cruise control that always works through this radar that allows you to maintain a constant distance from the vehicle that is proceeding at this point. I don't know if I really said it all. I also tried to be pretty quick now. We passed to the road test, and let's go see how it goes and how the gearbox also goes on these spectacular roads here in Spain. Welcome back to everyone. We are now riding the Moto Guzzi Stelvio. We head into what is called the Stelvio of Spain. There will be many, many curves, but in the meantime I'll describe it to you, starting with the riding position, which is suitable for many sizes. Saddle 830 thousandths of a millimeter off the ground. I, who am 1 meter and 73, can easily rest my feet on the ground. This comes help even off-road, very good insertion, a little big the tank, but all in all you are really very, very comfortable. Great work has been done regarding aerodynamics to increase the protectiveness to give a great protectiveness to the motorcycle. There is also, as you see, the windshield that raises and lowers electronically with the left handlebar block, 70 thousandths of a centimeter excursion. Protects very well, even at highway speeds higher than the allowed limits. I assure you that the bike is really very, very protective. Also protect well the hand guards, and also the controls are all in place. They are all in place. I will not dwell further because I already showed them to you from the static introduction where I showed you the motorcycle. What I would like to emphasize immediately is the quality of the ride. The Stelvio drives really well. It leans beautifully on the Michelin Anarchy Adventure 2 CT and is very maneuverable, especially in the changes of direction that really happen in an instant, guys. It corners with great naturalness. The bike is neutral, has no indecisions. When entering corners, you can enter even with the front brake clamped. This puts her much in favor of its accessibility. From the dynamic point of view, the behavior of the suspension is good. Among other things, are adjustable, as you have seen, but only in rebound preload with the fork that sinks a little in the first part of the excursion, especially when braking, so it sinks a little, but then it is sustained, and the mono that is particularly sustained, especially on impulsive bumps. However, I like this behavior because it gives a high level of dynamic behavior. Really granitic stability on the highway. The bike does not shake at all, and I must tell you that after trying it, even with the side cases among other things full, I absolutely have to say that the dynamic balance remains practically pinned, a bike that rides very well, and that, I will say it one more time, easily digests a use particularly sporty as on these roads. Let's talk now about the engine. The 90-degree V has a very good delivery from 3,500 RPM onwards, below 3,500 RPM. The thrust is there even in the high gears in 4th or even 5th. However, it is less. You open the throttle, but you have to wait a moment for the engine to win its inertia, the delivery, so it is full. However, let's see if I can make you feel a little bit of driving just with the noise of the engine. We put the gear low and away, just the singing of the V90 from Mandello. Wow, let's slow down a little bit. And let's talk about what is the big special observed of this motorcycle, that is the gearbox. And this was something that was totally revised on the Stelvio. The Exmodromic has been modified, the sprocket guard has been repositioned, as I have probably already told you, and the gearbox is super smooth, guys. It works perfectly. Not only the quick shifter, which is up and down, but it can also be up only. It has been redesigned in its operating logic, and in short, guys, I will tell you right away, it works great in second without quick shifter, without the use of the clutch. The gearbox absolutely satisfied me and comes out 100% promoted from this test on the Stelvio. The last paragraph, one of the last paragraphs I want to point it to, the braking system, the two front discs work great. I'll show you a little bit of the almost panic braking. It really brakes great. The front system is really difficult to get the ABS to work unless you make driving errors, in which, among other things, come in help. The rear brake has a 280 disc behind that in the curves, helps so much to modulate the benders at this time. But be careful not to step on it too hard, because the ABS might come in and foul your action a bit, but nothing dangerous, nothing like, say, to be careful of. It is a very normal, indeed, very reliable behavior of the braking system that I liked a lot. Still electronics, guys. The engine maps are 3 with 5 riding modes. They are quite differentiated from each other for my personal pleasure. I only ride the sport map, and the more aggressive one with a more exhilarating response of the engine. But also the other maps, even the rain one, actually give excitement, while having a whole set of features regarding the ABS and traction control, definitely much more conservative. Friends of amnetwork. We have come to the end of this day with the Moto Guzzi Stelvio to savor the first impressions of the new adventure of Mandello. Before I even tell you what I liked most and what I liked least, I want to take stock a bit on the standard equipment and optional equipment, because as standard we find the cruise control, this I forgot to say before, as well as I forgot to mention the cornering ABS thanks to the IMU platform, the 6-axis inertial platform of the Moto Guzzi Stelvio. There are also, thanks also to the inertial platform, the bending lights, that is those lights that come on when you tilt the bike and illuminate the inside of the curve, is not standard. The cruise shifter, which by the way works very well as it is not standard, beware the center stand. This is an accessory that will certainly come in very handy for the motorists who will use the Stelvio to go around the world on a motorcycle, always from the touring point of view. Let's talk a little bit about accessories, because they are available. You have certainly seen in the photographs the side bags and the top case. The top case is available in 2 sizes, in 2 capacities for touring, always for what concerns touring. Is also available the seat higher or lower, but only heated, therefore higher or lower, as well as also available the passenger seat heated and still in the touring point of view. I wanted to tell you all about it under this profile. Are always available as an option. Heated grips at this point, I just have to make a mention, instead of comfort, always in optics of moto touring. The vibrations are there, but they are not many. The footrests are fixed, and they are only on the footrests, which are fixed with interposition of seat in block, but rigidly, if you will, directly on the engine. Vibrations completely negligible. In my opinion, that does not affect the comfort of driving in the least. On the other hand, with regard to heat transfer, I must suspend judgment for a moment. We have ridden the motorcycle a lot. However, the temperature is around 20 degrees and I have this clothing I'll show you another time, particularly insulating, made to go where we've been before, 1,800 meters. So I wouldn't want any judgment to discount the fact that, today's situation is quite peculiar. I didn't feel any heats at all in this setup emerging from the engine or the exhaust. However, again, I suspend judgment. Let's talk about it maybe in the summer and see how it goes. Now let's talk instead about what I like the most and what I like the least. Of the Stelvio, first thing I like so much, the tractability of the engine. You put in 6th gear, you're at 2000 RPM throttle, and the bike goes forward without problems. Very smoothly, in a very friendly way. A very precise choice was probably made in terms of engine calibration, so it is a bike that is very accessible and not intimidating. This is the concept that we find in the second value I wanted to tell you about. It is a motorcycle that, despite the fact that it weighs 246 pounds, whether you are big or short, it handles with great ease, even by someone like me who is not a real macho. And even off-road, what little we did in short, I was at ease, I was not intimidated. The tractability of the engine, the 4-wheel laps, in my opinion, very apt. We'll talk about it in a moment. The seat height at a human altitude. In my opinion, they have done the miracle in quotes, and the bike rides very easily, is very accessible, very transverse. The third thing I like the most, or better, let's talk about the thing I like the absolute most of this bike, which is the quality of the ride. I have not tried all the competitors. I miss, for example, the Africa Twin with front wheel 19 inches that in fact has just arrived. However, I want to say that the ride of the Moto Guzzi Stelvio definitely ranks at the top, on the podium of a possible ranking for communicativeness, neutrality of behavior, and pure fun when the roads start to get twisty. I had a lot of fun with the Stelvio. This is because I repeat once again the concept, at the risk of sounding like a broken disc. The bike is very accessible, very communicative, fits very well in the corners, very quickly, perhaps also thanks to the standard Michelin Anarchy Adventure that have a philosophical profile of great handling while associated with a great stability. I must say it. And it turns very quickly capable of amusing you if you like to wield the bike between the curves, where you will find a bike that goes from all right to all left in a surprising way for a bike of this size and also of this weight, because the weight is there. We are almost 250 kilos, so kudos also for the ride quality of the Moto Guzzi Stelvio, in my opinion, really at the top. Let's now talk about the things I liked least. First of all, some venial sins in terms of finish. I found some plastic a bit soft, some cables in my opinion could have been covered better, or still the pump of the rear brake. I think it could have been better repaired, maybe in case of a fall off-road. It could be a bit too exposed, but we are talking about, in my opinion, venial and little defects. Also, what I think might be more sensitive is the fact that the tractability of the engine that we saw before, we now find it as a downside when we talk about the grit of the engine at low revs. In fact, if the bike is very smooth when you open the throttle in second or third all the way and you are at 2,500 RPM, here it is a little bit to splash up the tachometer. Not that the bike is going bad, the bike runs great, the engine is very smooth in its delivery. I liked it, but if you are looking for a very sporty ride, know that the quickness in taking the revs is not the best in this engine. Probably has something to do with the heavy crankshaft, the final drive shaft. In short, a lot of inertia. In my opinion, we should even make a phone call to Euro 5 Plus to ask the explanations about this issue. Jokes aside, however, it is not, as said before, a particularly significant parameter if you are motorists, if instead you drive with a knife between your teeth. Just know that the bike does not spurt from 2,000 revs up to 4,000, is a little less responsive in taking revs compared to other competitors. At this point, I can tell you that we are preparing an in-depth on the Moto Guzzi Stelvio, where we will talk about the bike even more widely and answer all your questions. It will be on moto.it in its paid section. Do not miss it, and I'll be waiting for you there. Well, I think I've said it all, or at least everything I remember about this honestly amazing day riding the Mandello adventure. If I forgot something, write it below in the comments. Guys, forgive me, but I'm human too, and I can forget something. But I don't forget the prices. The Stelvio is available in two versions. The standard version that costs 16,499 euros, and the version equipped with the PFF electronic suite with the front and rear radars that we talked about before. That costs 17,299 euros, of course, at ex-dealer prices. It is available in two colors that you have certainly seen in the photos. Leave a comment below, follow us on socials, and we'll see you at the next AM Network video. Ciao!